What started off as a simple $2,500 beaver dam job almost turned into losing an entire excavator in the swamp. At one point, the ground completely gave out under the machine, and the whole excavator slid sideways towards the water. The tracks buried themselves in the mud, and suddenly we had the Cat 308 stuck with no way to drive it out. We tried everything we had on site. We even brought in a logging skidder, and that wasn't enough. Eventually, we had to call in a much bigger excavator just to recover the machine. So let me show you how quick a job in the woods turns into a full-blown recovery operation. So the plan for the day was pretty simple. There were a couple beaver dams in the back of the woods that were backing up with water, flooding part of the property. Thankfully, this time of the year it was mostly frozen, so we thought. The beaver dams can hold back surprisingly amount of water, and when they build in the wrong spot, they can cause drainage problems and wash out into trails or even on roads. The job was to go back there and dig out the dams, let the water drain, and open the flow back up. We unloaded the Cat 308 and we warmed everything up. We started tracking back through the woods towards the dams. Now, if you've ever worked around beaver ponds before, you already know the ground can be pretty sketchy. It might look solid on top, but underneath it's usually just mud, water, and sticks packed together. But starting out, everything seemed fine. When we got back there, we realized the first dam was actually behind the main one. It really wasn't holding much water anymore. Most of the water was being held by the second dam, so the first one was basically an older dam the beavers had built but earlier. We decided to dig it out just to clean everything up and make sure once the main dam was opened, the water would have a clear path to flow. That one went pretty quickly. We started pulling apart sticks and mud with the bucket, and within a few minutes it was opened up. Since the second dam was still holding the pond back, there really wasn't much pressure on that first one. So at this point, everything was going smooth. One dam down and the machine was running good and looked like the job was going to be quick and easy. Little did we know. Then we headed over to the second dam, and that's when things started to get interesting. Now the second dam was the one holding all the water back, and because of that, the entire area around it was completely soaked. The ground back there had basically turned into a sponge for all the standing water. From where we were sitting, the right side of the dam looked like it was the best place to position the machine. So we slowly tracked the 308 up along the edge and started to get ready for digging. At first, everything felt solid, but the second we got a little too close to the edge, the ground completely gave out underneath the machine. One second everything was fine, the next second the excavator was slid sideways towards the swamp. The tracks lost traction instantly and the mud started pushing up around the undercarriage. And just like that, the 308 was stuck. Now at first, you always hope you can just crawl yourself out of it. So we tried moving the tracks, repositioning the boom, and seeing if we could lift ourselves onto something solid. But every time the tracks moved, they just dug deeper into the mud. That swamp mud had the machine locked in there. The last thing you want to do is make the situation worse by burying the machine even more. So at that point, we shut everything down and started figuring out another plan. Because it wasn't clear we were getting the 308 out of there by ourselves, luckily we were able to get our hands on a cable skidder. If you've never seen one of these things before, a skidder is a logging machine built to drag huge trees out of the woods. They've got a lot of pulling power, so we figured it might be enough to yank the excavator free. The problem was the ground area of the machine was soft and the skidder couldn't get close enough to pull from the side. So we decided we pulled from across the beaver dam. We ran the cable out, we hooked it up to the excavator, we got everything tightened up. Then the skidder started pulling. The cable got tight, the engine was working, but the excavator didn't budge at all. The mud had buried it deep. At that point, we realized even the skidder wasn't going to get it out. So now we needed something with real weight and real power behind it. We called a local excavation company and explained what was going on. They came out there and took a look at the situation. At first, they were talking about bringing in the Cat 311, but honestly, for the situation, it's not a whole lot bigger than the 308. With how buried the machine was, we knew we were going to need something bigger. So they ended up bringing out the Cat 325. And when that machine came in, you could tell right away it would get the job done. The 325 is an absolute beast compared to the 308. It's way heavier, it has more hydraulic power, and exactly what we needed to pull the machine free. Seeing that thing show up was definitely a relief, because at that point, we'd been stuck out there for a few hours trying to figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to get this excavator out of the swamp. So we got everything set up, chains hooked up, machines positioned, we made sure we had a good angle to pull from. Once everything was ready, it was time to get the 308 out. The 325 slowly started pulling, and at first the chains tightened up and nothing moved. But little by little, he could see the excavator start to shift. Mud breaking between loose around the tracks, and the machine lifted up just enough to start climbing out. But slowly but surely, the 308 started inching its way out of the swamp. It was slow, but it was finally moving. And just like that, the The tracks grabbed solid ground and the excavator was popped free. Just like that, the machine was out. Once we had the thorough weight back on solid ground, we repositioned the machine and got right back to work. We still had a dam to remove. So we dug the second dam, started pulling it apart. Once the opening water started coming rushing through, within a few minutes, the whole pond started draining down and the water was flowing and it was finally restored. That job should have realistically only taken a couple hours, but it definitely turned into a lot more than what we were expecting. So what started as a simple $2,500 beaver dam job almost turned into losing an excavator in the swamp. This just goes to show how unpredictable this kind of ground can be, especially around beaver ponds. Everything can look solid one minute, and the next minute the whole machine can be buried in mud. Luckily we had the right people around and a big enough machine to pull us out. In the end, the excavator made it out. The dams got cleared, and the water was flowing again. But that was definitely a close call.